My name is Amy Burrows from Academy Global, and today I'm sitting with Dr. Tilman Burma, a management scholar from the University of Wollongong. Thank you for joining me today, Doctor. Would you mind to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dr. Tilman Burma. I grew up in a countryside, remote countryside in Germany, more so from the north. Before joining universities, I actually did an apprenticeship at a bank for 2.5 years, which would influence my professional life all the way until today. It's not so much I'm not a finance scholar. I'm not passionate about banking per se, but the intensity of education was the one that probably intrigued me the most. So I would be in a school environment in the morning, and then would join the floor, the banking, the outlets, and apply what I've just learned. And it's that richness of educational experience that really influenced the way I look at education and teaching. I then moved on and went to the University of Applied Sciences in Kiel, and similar there, I found a couple of professors who would take us to the Hamburg ports and immerse us into that environment of the port environment to then apply what we've learned. And then my goal or my career aspiration was to become a container broker in the Hamburg ports, and it was made very clear to me that my business English was not sufficient enough, and so I came down under. So I stopped over in New Zealand, went to the University of Waikato, bumped into a young scholar, Professor Paul Childerhaus and Eric Deakins at the time, and they applied a very similar concept to academia, where I would spend probably a good third of my time in businesses, in large and small companies, doing something called supply chain diagnostic. And from there I got stuck. I did my PhD and then came over to Australia, then joined Wollongong. But I've never lost this that desire and the passion of applied research, applied learning, bridging that academia practitioner relevance gap.
Doctor, what are some of your research insights and how does it differ from traditional methods?
Let me start with the second part of the question. So traditional management science methods would rather belong to a qualitative type case study or interview type data collection, or the other extreme is a quantitative side of things, where surveys are developed and then statistically analyzed. What we're doing is somewhat different. So we are assembling a multidisciplinary research team. So it's not an individual research approach. So we are assembling this multidisciplinary team, and then immerse ourselves in that company setting. So we are studying processes on the shop floor. We are observing management practices as they happen. We call that kind of a supply chain diagnostic maturity assessment, trying to understand root causes for poor performing supply chains or processes in that regard. So we're using a multi-method, multi-researcher, so multidisciplinary researcher approach, and therefore strengthen research rigor. So it's really hard to put us into a qualitative or quantitative box. We are a multi-method. We're taking a multi-method approach. The other angle is the highlights that I remember is, for example, spending half or 1/3 of my PhD in industry, trying to make sense of it. We've done some research in hospital settings, looked at how patients are flowing or not flowing through the emergency department. Again, working with nurses and clinicians and trying to understand the system and how it operates. So in a way, it's applied system thinking. And then from there, we moved into longitudinal studies to understand how supply chains evolve and change over time, how they become more productive, more efficient, or in more recent time, more impactful. So we're also working with social enterprises to find ways how they can drive impact into society.
You talked about process improvements. What are some of the common issues you've found?
So some of the most common issues are often within people and people behavior. I think it doesn't come to a great surprise, I think, to the audience too, but so when we're looking at processes, we're looking at the variation in the processes. And these variations can come either from the supply, from the demand, or from the control side. And we are assessing uncertainty drivers for the process. And one of the largest uncertainty drivers is human behavior in the processes, which, as I said, is probably not the biggest surprise. But it's also when managers or staff tackling those improvement opportunities, what they often apply is an anti-systemic approach. So they're trying to optimize their own function or their own working environment, not taking in consideration the wider system and the cause and effect that is created. So we call it anti-systemic behavior. So if I change something in point A, what are the ripple effects, not only for my internal customer, so my colleague down the process, but also what are the impacts to the end user or to the customer. Likewise, if I change my behavior in one of the process steps here, there are ripple effects that can occur further upstream. So what are the impacts for that on a supplier side? And so a lot of companies are approaching process improvement mainly through what I call a functional lens, trying to make their own function more efficient or optimizing their own functional area, and that often leaves the system sub-optimized. Other issues we find is technology. Data accuracy is a huge problem in Australian and New Zealand businesses in particular. You have data being extracted out of the ERP system, multiple truths, so everyone is sitting on an Excel spreadsheet. Everyone is sitting on a somewhat different truth, but all making decisions on the process all the time. That causes a lot of variation and a lot of issues in the process. So people, technology, and anti-systemic behaviors or improvements are probably the three big items that I see.
There are a lot of process improvement consultants out there. Why should companies decide to work with academia?
It's a good question. For once, and this is from experience working with industry, is that as an academic institute, we don't report to our bottom line. So in a way, we are brutally honest. We don't have a product to sell. We don't have an axe to grind. So it's that brutal honesty that we bring to the company, because we don't have a solution ready to go, and we're just looking for the symptoms to roll out our solutions. The other aspect is that we have been trained to work in multidisciplinary settings. So if we find an issue, let's say an application for 3D printing or IoT, we can draw that expertise in at very short notice. So is that multidisciplinary and that well-trained systems lens to then optimize the system, which of course there are really good consultants out there. I'm not saying that at all, but it's just it gives a different, more neutral base to go into process improvement.
Do you have any examples of when you've worked with industries in the past?
Yeah, sure. We did some work with a New Zealand engineering firm where we did a full-blown supply chain diagnostic. So again, broadening the scope of the systems lens to look at their suppliers and customers and their in-house processes and their current status. We've identified a range of different root causes, and the company decided to tackle those root causes and went from an engineering to order firm to an assemble to order business. And through these changes, the company managed to triple their throughput through lead time compression in their own processes. So what that means is that what took them about 3 months to assemble one of these products, they got the assembly down to less than a month. And through these changes, overall productivity and efficiency were greatly improved, and also the innovation capability, because it freed up a lot of engineering time. We've done some work with the hospitals, particularly around patient flow and lead time compression, and the results are yet to be seen. But I think more recently, which really excites me, is the work we've done in the construction industry. So there's one example. So I'm part of a steel research hub, and we looked at alternative materials for mid-rise construction, and we looked at cold form steel in particular, being part of the steel hub, kind of obvious. Even though local industry was still somewhat reluctant to jump, we are now implementing some of these findings from a supply chain perspective in mid-rise apartments in Spain. So one of my research assistant or fellow went back to Spain to implement, which is and it's really getting this live data, from the theoretical approach to now implementation, that live data. The third one is also construction related. It's prefabrication solution to social housing. So in that, it's not about delivering a prefab house. It's a way to stimulate decentralized local economies. So the company has patents in a steel frame solution, a collapsible steel frame solution. They approached us, and we've designed the business model and supply chain solution around that, which currently gets implemented. And it's really exciting to see how much impact you can create along the construction supply chain to communities that need it the most. So in this case, we're working with indigenous communities, but also broader social housing sector. And if you design the business model and the supply chain model right, you can have impacts all the way along the supply chain, rather than just producing a finished house to the end user. We are now inviting communities to start manufacturing and assembling their own houses. So these are 3-4 different projects that I'm currently involved in, which really get me quite excited. And there's more in the making, particularly around circular economy.
The university landscape is changing drastically at the moment. Has your approach to research a future in the business schools of tomorrow?
Well, actually, I haven't quite thought about that yet, but I would hope so. So what's happening in the university landscape, also partially due to COVID-19, is that the international student market is breaking away, at least for the foreseeable future. So our pool of students that we're looking for is a lot more domestically driven. And I think in the past, universities did a good job in catering to that particular market. But now we need to reinvent our business model and show more relevance to our domestic market. And in that, we have a role to play in bridging knowledge and translating theories into specific context. And that's kind of what we're doing. We're not the blue sky researchers. We are not teaching the theories and then hope that the students know how to apply them. We're actually working very actively with industry, helping them to translate these theories into their context, into their setting. And being a multidisciplinary researcher, it will help even more so to make it meaningful to different industry sectors. So yes, I do believe that the style of research that I resemble has absolutely a future in the business schools of tomorrow.
Thank you for your time today, Dr. Tillman. It's nice to know that there are some management scholars out there working alongside Australian industries.